From the Los Angeles Times, this is Can't Stop Watching, your TV faves on their TV faves. I'm your host, Yvonne Villarreal. On today's episode, we can't stop watching Caitriona Balfe. She plays Claire Fraser in the Starz drama series Outlander. In our conversation, Caitriona talks to me about the dramatic finale of season 5.
Without reading scripts, you always have this worry about, well, okay, but how are you going to do it? And I also really wanted to protect Claire in the fact that, yes, why do we need to see another rape? But also, if you're going to do it, then we can't just gloss over it.
Caitriona also opens up about the moment her character Claire saves Jamie's life. And Outlander fans, you know the scene I'm talking about. So, here we go.
It's 1945. Hitler is defeated. America is looking to outsmart a new enemy, the Soviet Union. To advance in rocketry, aviation, and chemical weapons, America recruits scientists and engineers who fueled the war machine of another nation, Nazi Germany. Operation Paperclip brought the Third Reich's most ingenious and often villainous men to the United States.
The War Department thought if we let them go back to Germany, some other nation will pick them up and use them against us.
His file said he was 100% Nazi, a dangerous type. Somehow, the file was changed and he came in.
I'm Michael Ian Black. Join me and historian Monique Laney on the series Paperclip, funded by Amazon Studios and produced by LA Times Studios in support of the Emmy-eligible original drama series Hunters, starring Al Pacino and Logan Lerman. Available on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Caitriona, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's so nice to chat to you.
What part of your house have you sort of discovered has become your favorite room in this time?
Well, we have sort of like an open plan kitchen living room thing, and I'm spending most of my time here. My couch and I have become very well acquainted. It's where I do most of my reading, my eating, my watching TV. I'm glad I invested wisely in a very comfortable one.
So tell me how you've been spending your days. I mean, I've seen that baking is happening, running is happening, sketching is happening. Like, how have you been getting through this time?
I mean, it's been up and down. I had a good charity challenge that I was doing because so many charities in the UK have been experiencing this kind of downgrade in funds. We did a whole charity day. And so, yeah, I had a great week leading up to that where I was really, really busy. I haven't sketched in years, and stupidly I gave myself this task of drawing over 20 of the cast members or the characters in the show. And that was, that was a full-time job for quite a few days. And the results were not, didn't really show, I would say, all the hard work that went into it. But it was really fun. And that was really nice just to do something very creative and fun in that way. But yeah, bit of exercise. But yeah, lots of eating, and you have to cook it to eat it. So that's been mainly it. It's not very exciting over here.
Wait, which cast member did you find the hardest to draw?
Well, I think the most pressure was obviously Jamie, because I knew everyone would be like, what's Jamie like? And you have to see Jamie. I figured out that all Highlanders, when I draw them, sort of look the same. Rupert sort of turned out a little bit like sad Brad Pitt, which actually Grant was quite happy about. But the women are really hard, and there's so many of the women. Like Lotta was really difficult because she's so finely featured. She's like, this Dutch beauty, and you know, it should be done in oils like a Vermeer or something like that. But it didn't work out very well. And Lauren sort of looked like a Gerber baby in a bonnet. So, so I apologize to all of them.
Well, and I see you've been watching Normal People. What are your thoughts so far?
See, I'm a lover. I gotta say, I'm a lover. And it's also, I've heard some people sort of make complaints about it's not like a typical teenage thing, but I think it's very typical for Ireland. I think it has such a specific tone to it that just brought me straight back to secondary school, like our high school. And it's, even just those kind of relationships at the school and who was cool and who was not, and the kind of difference between people who have money or who are a little bit outside of the kind of core group of people. I thought it was so true. And yeah, I've watched the entire series and I'm devastated because I've no more of it to watch.
I was going to say, what other shows have you sort of caught up on or discovered in this time?
I've been watching 000, but I can only really do one of those a night because it's really heavy. And then usually the antidote, at least the last week or so, has been Dave, which has been quite funny. I just, you need to sort of have something that's a little bit heavier and dark, and then you need something really silly and fun. I had totally missed Westworld, so we've been catching up on that. There's so much. I don't know. It's too much TV.
When we talked to Jamie, when we talked with Sam, he was telling us how he's watching 90 Day Fiancé, and I was curious if he had persuaded you to start watching that.
No, I have a propensity for some trash TV, but I try and have a boundary. And I think that's below my boundary. Although, I'm not one to judge. I do watch, some of the Housewives. So, I can't really, say anything, but no, I have not gotten into 90 Day Fiancé.
Were you a big TV watcher growing up? Like, what were the shows or characters you loved?
Well, for years, we actually didn't have TV, which I blame for when there is a TV on, I can just get sucked in. But yeah, when I was about 5, I think, my little brother and I were fighting. He wanted to play and I was watching TV. So he unplugged the TV and walked with the plug in his hand. So the TV came down and smashed. And my dad was like, that's it. No more TV. And we didn't have it for about 5-6 years. So that was my Victorian childhood. But also growing up in Ireland, we would get a lot of reruns of shows, American shows, but like 15 years later or, 10 years later. So the shows I really remember, like I was obsessed with MASH. I loved that show. I loved Cagney and Lacey, but it was a great show. I'm trying to think what else. The A-Team featured heavily at one point, but they were all like, and Cheers. So yeah, those are my shows.
Cagney and Lacey is so good.
I know. I feel like it's a show I need to go back and revisit.
How do you think Claire would be spending her time if she was living through this moment? Like, would she be on the front lines treating the patients? Would she be trying to help, come up with a vaccine? Would she be at home with her grandkids if she has more grandchildren? Would she be home? Like, talk to me about what you think she'd be doing.
Well, I think Claire is sort of perfectly prepared for this kind of thing. I mean, Claire would be the one character that I think would do really well. I think she would be working on the front lines. I think she would be sort of all hands on deck, trying to help and barking orders at people to make PPE for everyone and, scolding people for not washing their hands enough or not listening to the advice. Yeah, I think her skill set would come in really well during this time.
She's someone we need. You and Sam became producers on the series in the 5th season. So what was the learning process like, and how would you say it has sort of enhanced your view as an actor?
I think this year, especially the first half of the season, was basically just sitting and listening. We didn't really get the title until all stories were broken and most scripts were more or less laid out. Obviously, they weren't finished being written, so we didn't have much input at sort of the early stories stages. But, I think we had a lot more influence sort of on set and how things were going. And, our writer's room is in California. And we usually just have one writer producer on set whenever we're shooting. And there was a lot of new writers this season. So people who were coming to the show, maybe not as much knowledge as they had. And even like some of our line producer had changed hands this year. So there was a lot of new faces around. And I think, where we were able to really sort of bring a positive influence was in keeping that through line, or trying to keep the through line of what the sort of essence of the story is. And it's been really interesting. I mean, just sitting in production meetings and learning what every single department brings to the table and why certain decisions are made. It's really fascinating. And as an actor, you know, I think sometimes you envision a scene in a certain way, and you arrive on set, and when things are different, you're sort of like, well, why is this the way it is? You know, and then you realize that there is 15 to 20 reasons why, financially or logistically, that these things aren't possible. And I think it's actually really beneficial as an actor to have a broader view of what's going on in the show. And, you know, I think it is definitely a thing with productions where they don't feel like the actors need to know anything. You know, it's sort of like show up, say your lines, and, you know, do what you're told. But I actually think that most actors would actually benefit more from knowing more about what goes into the production. You know, I love it. And I definitely don't want it just to be a vanity title. You know, I want to be as proactive and as invested as I'm let. You know, I think it's fascinating, you know, especially when you've been on a show for 5 years and you're sort of playing the same character. You want to keep learning new things, and you want to keep growing as a person and professionally. So in that way, it's been really good.
Well, I want to talk about season 5. How did you find playing Claire at this sort of more mature stage in her life? Like, to have her daughter around, her son-in-law, her grandchild, and what did you find exciting about this moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's very different. You know, in many ways, it's much more of an ensemble now. You know, the first couple of seasons, the show was told pretty much exclusively through Claire's eyes. And now we've opened up that world. And I think, you know, there's a lot of benefits to storytelling in that way. You can veer off into many different little mini worlds and everything, and it enriches the show, I think. But to play a character who's sort of more settled and later in life, you know, there's such pluses and there's some minuses that come along with that, because in many ways, you know, you feel so protective over these characters, and it's so nice to see her be so fulfilled. You know, she has her family, her love, and she also is getting to really invest time in this kind of professional side of herself and fulfill the passion within her. And that's really great as an actor to be able to play all of that. But then the minus of that is it comes at, you know, with a slight lack of complications and drama. So, you know, when your character is really struggling with things, that's when you get to, you know, really sink your teeth into the meat of it. So it's been interesting, and it's definitely interesting, I think, for the writers to find that kind of the conflict and where the inner workings of Claire's life, what, you know, how we mine that for great drama.
Well, as you mentioned, she's sort of devoting her time to her role as a surgeon and as a healer in the community. How important was that for you, to show her passion for her work and finding ways to sort of utilize her knowledge?
Yeah, well, I think it was really important. You know, I think one of the storylines this season that Claire decides to try and cultivate penicillin, you know, it wasn't just about the fact that she's trying to make this medicine. It was so much more about trying to be the sort of master of her own destiny and protecting this family and this community that have built up around her. And definitely, you know, that storyline went through some different rewrites and you know, I definitely, at one point, I think they were almost giving the discovery to Marcelly, and I was like, you cannot do that to me. You can't do that to Claire. You know, this is something she's worked so hard on. You can't just give it away. So I think it's really important. I think it's good to see, you know, the idea of being fulfilled is a multifaceted thing. And it's also, it changes and you go through different phases in your life. And I think, you know, last season they were setting up this home. They were finding their feet, and she didn't really have time to invest in that side of herself. But this season, with being settled, I think it was really important that we get to see her sort of create the life that she would really love to have for herself.
How did you feel about the maggots as scene partners?
I was fine with the maggots, except for the fact that they stank. We have an animal wrangler, Dave, who works on the show, and I think he gets given these kind of crazy, orders every so often, find us rats, find us maggots, and who knows where they come from. But these particular maggots came from rotting flesh, a carcass of some animal. And he brought them onto the set, and I sort of sent him off to wash them because they just stank of rotting meat, which was really gross. And when you're going to spend, an hour or two playing with them, it's not the nicest smell to have around you. But yeah, I don't know, like things like that. As long as it's not cockroaches, I'm fine. If that was a bucket of cockroaches, you would not have seen me with a camera or like looking at them so closely. I would be screaming like a little child somewhere in a corner.
It's 1945. Hitler is defeated. America is looking to outsmart a new enemy, the Soviet Union. To advance in rocketry, aviation, and chemical weapons, America recruits scientists and engineers who fueled the war machine of another nation, Nazi Germany. Operation Paperclip brought the Third Reich's most ingenious and often villainous men to the United States.
The War Department thought if we let them go back to Germany, some other nation will pick them up and use them against us.
His file said he was 100% Nazi, a dangerous type. Somehow, the file was changed and he came in.
I'm Michael Ian Black. Join me and historian Monique Laney on the series Paperclip, funded by Amazon Studios and produced by LA Times Studios in support of the Emmy-eligible original drama series Hunters, starring Al Pacino and Logan Lerman. Available on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, I also need to ask you about a scene from the snake episode. And I think you know which one I'm talking about. Fans were